Yeah, that's easier because then I'm not trying to look at 3 different video screens. Because it's weird to listen to you on Zoom, but then watch you with the time delay.
For sure. Well, we got it going here now. So don't go telling all the secrets now, Mike. You're live.
Your mom.
So, oh, there we go. Some people are already watching too on Facebook. Let me turn on Instagram here. Hello, everybody. There we go.
YouTube live.
Hey guys, welcome to Knife Wars.
Oh, there we go. All right.
Hey, there we go. Live now. That's us.
Hey guys, welcome
There we go. Okay, we're all set up. We got it. We did it, everyone. We did it. We're famous.
Oh, hey, there
and
we
smart.
go. Live now. That's us.
All right. So today, if you haven't looked up, Derek's waving. So for anyone joining us on Instagram, if you want to see what we're doing the split screen thing on YouTube and Facebook again. So if you went to knifeware.com/YouTube, you'll get it all. You'll get all the goods. You'll get to see what Mike's saying too. So today,
Yeah, who would
for
want to do
Japanese
that?
101. Yeah, who wants to listen to Mike? But today, Kevin had to swap out with Mike, which is fun. You know, means we'll be less dad jokes this week. He won't have his joke book unless you have the joke book.
No, I think
And then
dad
if
jokes they're over, man. They're so dad to me.
Yeah. So I saw your pun there. I heard it.
I
But
see you
we
just
figured
ignoring
last
it,
week
though.
we were. Yeah, it's what I have to do. There's this train's on a set of tracks, Mike. We got to get somewhere.
Okay,
So.
let's go. Choo choo.
So today we're going to talk about knife handles, particularly kind of Western handles versus Japanese handles. It's largely the big thing about handles I find is that it's mostly opinion. You shouldn't really, like, some people prefer one over the other, but for the most part, it's just people's opinion. They're going to feel different in your hand and so on. But if you have any questions pertaining to, different handle styles or anything about knives, by all means, shoot them up in the comments on Facebook, YouTube, even on Instagram if you prefer to hang out over there. We'll just keep an eye on everything and yeah.
I'm gonna start this off with the at the very beginning, at the very obvious thing when we talk about handles. When I went to go and buy my first knife when I was in cooking school, this is like in 1997, 96 or 97, and it was like, go and buy a knife with a full tang. That's how you know it's good. You need to have a full tang, and it's got to have the 2 men on it. And those were the only 2 qualitative things to look for in a knife. Full tang, 2 man. Not like who made it, what type of steel is it made out of, how is it sharpened, will it rust? There was very few measures. And I think maybe once upon a time, those might have been truths, but they are certainly not now.
Yeah, well, I would say that, like, when I was in culinary school and when I graduated and, my folks gave me some money to go buy myself a knife, I wouldn't even have known to ask those questions. Like, I didn't, I wouldn't have known. Like, obvious. Well, I guess now it's obvious that different steel types have different, different applications. Some are going to be better than others. But yeah, back then I wouldn't have even known. BTW on Instagram is asking about, he says 270 Gyuto or Tsujihiki. Are you asking what I would prefer, or what do I think you should have? What do you want to do? Do you want like a all day, every day kind of knife? Do you want something for carving? They're very, that's a 270. I got a 270 Kiritsuke right there.
There's a
lot. It's a bit of a loaded question.
You could go there. What size? Which shape of 270 do I want? I mean, I've got a Takeda 270 Kiritsuke, 2 straight, 2 long. All the edge hits the cutting board at the same time, and it's like hitting the brakes. I think the knife with the curve is a little better at that length, but I mean, I got a 270 Gyuto. but I have a 270 Tsuji. The Masakage Tsujihikis are a little taller, so I find you can sort of give them a bit of double duty. They're like a thin gyuto, but a tall slicer.
Oh, you know what I've got here? I've got a 270 Zero right in front of me.
Really? BTO, what do you want to know?
Yeah. So, they say as a second knife. What's your first?
First.
Yeah, because that would make a difference. What's the first knife that you've got? But this is what Mike's talking about with the Masakage Tsujis being a little bit taller.
Oof, those Zero Tsujihikis are so nice. And you know what? I like the Zeros because of the handle. And like when we're talking about handles, there's the Western style, which is what Chris has there, and there's the Japanese style. Shows a Japanese one. You know, the 3 rivets through the tang, sure, that's pretty solid design. The Japanese handle where there's a piece of wood slipped over the end. Hey, look, here's a Japanese knife. I'll get myself out of the way. Without a handle. Here's the handle. This handle doesn't fit properly. You burn them in so they fit to friction, but you just slide it on. We put a little epoxy in there to make it stick, right? So there's sort of 2 different ways of building it. I think that
BTW has a 240 Gyuto and a paring knife. I'd get a Tsujihiki.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd go for the Tsujihiki if you've already got a 240 Gyuto. A 270 Gyuto if you already have a 240 is,
almost doubling up.
Yeah, it's a bit of overlap there. Tsujihiki is going to be a lot thinner. You'd be able to be better for carving than a Gyuto would. So, there is a handful of people watching on Instagram. I'd recommend if you wanted to go over to YouTube or Facebook, and you could see the knives that Mike is showing off as well. So it's just knifeware.com/YouTube, or I think it's like facebook.com/knifeware or something like that. So, but yeah, like when you're looking at the different handle styles, like a lot of people, like Mike was saying, when we were kind of getting into this, everyone said your knife had to look like that, had to have that type of handle if it was any good. But it's really just, for me, it just comes down to preference, right? Oh, Manaka-san is watching on Instagram.
Konnichiwa. I think the one thing that you got to remember when you got a Japanese knife with that hard steel blade. Now, hard steel means your knife's going to be super sharp. It's going to hold its edge for a nice long time, but it also means it's brittle. So if you're looking at a knife thinking, I need a handle that's really strong, so when I try to chop through a piece of wood with it, I'm not going to snap the handle off the knife. Well, long before you snap the handle off of one of these knives, you will have destroyed the edge. So keep in mind, this is a finesse tool. This is not a blunt force trauma kind of object.
So our friend Minority Report Eatery on Instagram has said that he has big hands, so he needs a Western knife. You just need a taller knife, Now, if you like, I won't talk you out of it. Like if you like Western handles, you like Western handles. But I find sometimes when you've got bigger mitts, you need just a taller knife, So then it's not about the handle so much as it is the space. So you're not banging your knuckles on the board.
Well, and something to bring up too, Chris, like just the way you're holding that knife is part of my next point. And you're holding the knife. You don't necessarily hold the handle. And we see a lot of knives with over-designed handles where it's meant to be some ergonomic thing that locks your hand into one place. And I don't like that. Depending on what I'm doing, I'll hold my knife differently. And often I'm holding the knife by the blade, and the handle is just a counterweight.
Yeah. And you know what? It just comes down to balance quite a bit. I grabbed this 165 Nikiri because Chef Mech said that I've really been swooning over a 165 Denka Nikiri.
Yeah, you should.
So I thought I would grab it and I would just wave it at him and taunt him with it. But yeah, when you hold a knife,
you have a Denka Nikiri, Chris, don't you?
I do. I have a weird one though. I have one with a Japanese handle. Oh, Stump Kitchen is here too. Hello.
Oh, what's up?
Yeah. So when you're holding your knife, whether it's a Japanese knife or a Western knife, you want to, you pinch the blade, get right up on it, Same thing here. Now Fujiwara puts that cool little indent, the finger notch, which allows you to choke up on it a little bit easier. It's almost like training wheels for how to hold a knife properly. But I find when you're holding it proper, one of the things that drives me nuts. And I don't know. I'm not trying to like throw anyone under the knife bus here, but like when people start playing the teeter-totter game in the store, I'm worried you're going to drop the knife on the counter and then it's going to chip, and you're going to buy a knife that you didn't mean to. But I have a hard time, like, I don't know what we're looking for in that.
Well, you're going to find where the balance point is, right?
You know,
and that's a way to find where the balance point is. But the truth is, what you really got to do is you just pull your middle finger up to the spine, not the spine, the back of the blade. Fancy knife word time, guys. That's called the choil. So you bring your middle finger up to the choil and you hold it. And then I give it a little bit of a wag back and forth. And that'll tell me if it's tip heavy or weight it to the handle. And honestly, I think if I'm going to have a knife like a Santoku, a Nakiri, not even a Nakiri, to be honest, Santoku or a Gyuto, I'll want it to be a little bit more balanced in the center where my hand is holding it. But a Tsujihige or a Nakiri, I like them better when they're tip heavy, to be honest.
Yeah, something a little bit, even like a big Gyuto. I like it when a big Gyuto's got, well, like it's got more weight to the front. So then it's just kind of keeps going on its own.
What's that one? What Gyuto is that one?
That's a 270 Kumo.
Oh, yeah.
Or no, that's a 240. That's a 240. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
That's a 270.
That's a big knife.
Yeah. So, but there's different shapes too. You know, like a lot of people I find when you're helping them pick out, because like the handle is the part that you are touching the most, right? Like, or it's like, you know, Mike was saying, like you're holding the blade here, but you know, if you don't like the way it feels in your hand, you don't like the ridges or whatnot, that's worth mentioning, and it's worth like having an opinion about, because it is a part that you interact with quite a bit, right? So,
well, and I would say like something that I've often said to our customers when they're trying to decide which knife they want from our store, a lot of times people get lost in how long is it going to hold its edge for and which one's sharper.
Yeah.
Well, frankly, what we carry is all sharp, and the difference in and amongst the knives we carry is fairly small, especially if you're coming to us for your first Japanese knife and you're leaving behind the German knife world. The jump you're going to make is going to be huge, and what you're going to feel and the edge retention you're going to become used to is going to be a vast difference. So really what I'm trying to say is what's important is getting a knife that feels good in your hand.
Yeah, whatever fits your hand is the right one, right?
Ooh,
and that's why that's a Denka with a wall. Yeah. So a bunch of people just joined on Instagram. If you were to go over to YouTube or Facebook, if you're able, you'd be able to get the other half of the conversation where Mike Rinch, I don't even know what your actual job title is. Mike's my boss. Mike's my boss. So he's the step between Chris Lord and Kevin Kent. He is on the other half of the conversation. So if you want to kind of zip over to YouTube, you can see what Mike is saying.
Do you know what I think my job is? And I don't know if you know this, but so sailing in America's Cup, right? That big fancy sailboat race they have every year. They always have their crew, right? And there's the skipper and the guy who like pulls on the sails and the guy who does this and the guy who navigates. There's always one guy on the boat, and his role is called the owner's representative. So he doesn't do anything. He doesn't do anything, but he just watches to make sure. So if you screw something up, I got to know who screwed it up so I can report back.
Nice.
They're like, nah, he broke it. He's fired.
Yeah, get rid of him.
Right.
But I grabbed this because this is one of the things that, like, while we're on the topic of, like, we're talking about handles today, people often, they'll give the old Fujiwara Denkas a hard time about the handles because they don't think that they're, you know, like a knife, like this knife deserves a different handle, deserves a better handle. But it kind of, just imagine, like, if this handle was like super polished and it just wouldn't look right, you know? Like, I always think like Denkas are like the, I'm not a huge car guy, but like, you know, like rat rods, you ever hear of those? Like when you get like, it looks like a real shitty, rusty old like Mad Max style car, but they go super, super fast. Like they got like some kind of stupid engine underneath. That's what a Denka is to me. Like it kind of looks like
the rat rod of a knife.
Yeah. How long? Oh, Rob's asking, how long does it take to ship to the UK? Well, we do most of our international shipping with DHL, and they are usually pretty quick. Somewhere in the realm of a week, provided it doesn't get caught up in customs on your end.
We get the knives out of our door in about 24 hours right now.
Yeah.
So if you place an order somewhere between Monday and Friday, it'll be out in about 24 hours out of our door. And then it's up to the shipping company. And yeah, those DHL guys are pretty quick. Unfortunately, when it does get to the border and customs, like who knows who's working that day and what mood they're in, right?
Yeah. So yeah, that's over on Instagram. So yeah, Rob, it takes us about a day to get a package, like get your knives packed up and shipped out. It'll leave our door, usually within 24 hours, sometimes faster. But then, yeah, give it about 7 business days or so to get across the pond, as we say over here.
So
yeah, go ahead.
We've got a couple comments here on YouTube. Derek Brown's been hitting us up here.
Oh, Derek knows what's up.
Well, we're talking about, he first is just like the guy who was talking about the Tsuji. He said, get the Musashi 270 mirror finish Tsuji. And I can't disagree. But,
he wants that knife.
He's bringing up a good point here about the wah handle on a petty knife.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it really makes a difference here where, to me personally, I interchange handles on knives. It doesn't really matter. But when I do get to a knife kind of 150 millimeters or shorter, I typically go for the Western handle. I find it shorter. It makes the knife feel a little bit more nimble. I don't know why. Yep.
Yeah, a lot of people kind of, I think Kevin would generally agree with that too, like a Western handle on a smaller knife. I don't know. I still like it. I'm kind of weird. Like, I generally prefer a Japanese handle, like across the board. Now, every now and again, I'll pick up a knife and it feels right. Like, I've got a Mugen 150 petty, and that's got a Western handle on it. I've got a couple of those. It's a weird shape. We don't have them anymore, but those Tojiro flat, like the Senku, remember those? They've got the weird kind of almost Western, kind of like that weird, like Miyabi hybrid, kind of like it's round, but it's like real heavy, Yep.
Or like the Guy Fieri knife where that butt end of the handle was like scored and it was sort of spiky, so you could use it to crush garlic with.
Yes. Yeah.
I wouldn't suggest doing that. I wouldn't suggest pointing your chef knife up at your face while you move it up and down. No,
I would not either. We've got a question on Instagram, and I don't really know. Okay. It's have I seen a Fujiwara Denka with a Nihonto finish? I don't know what that means. Oh, here's some kind of polishing. Let me look. I don't know.
Nihonto, I think.
Yeah.
I can ask Naoto. He's not far from me. But Nihon, I believe, is a Japanese person, and To is a knife. So I don't know if that's a Japanese knife finish or what that means.
Yeah, because the only thing I found is like some guy who's like polishing a sword. It looks kind of mirrory. We'll get Naoto to chime in on that.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know that one. Because the Fujiwara Denkas, as far I've only ever seen them, and Mike, please step in if needed. I've only ever seen a Fujiwara Denka with a Kurochi Tsuchime finish. He does the Nishijis, but they're a different steel altogether, and the Mabaroshis are more polished up. But I'm not super familiar with the one you're describing. I didn't see anything like that when I was at his house, like in his store. It was all kind of just like everything is pretty rough and hammered like that. So, but yeah, we'll ask Naoto.
A comment here on Instagram from Iggy that's pretty smart too, and something that I would count as a benefit. When you've got a Japanese handle, it's actually quite easy to remove it and replace it.
Yeah.
So if it needs to be repaired, for example, and to be honest, I don't know how many times you've seen it, Chris, but I've certainly seen, I'd say pushing more than at least 10 times. I've seen customers who've brought their knife in and their dog has chewed the handle.
Yep. Yeah,
and
I've done at least 5.
Right? It's pretty easy. You just pop the handle off and replace it. So the thing that that Iggy's talking about is that you can see as your knife gets used and as it gets sharpened, the blade can wear away and become smaller and smaller, also becoming lighter and lighter. So
Yeah.
you can actually change the handle to change the balance, and you can get woods out of denser materials like ebony, things like that, or a harder material that can actually give you a different balance feel. And something that I've heard of that I don't know how much of a difference that this makes, but I've heard of people that will sharpen their Yanagiba specifically, and then at the end of the sharpening, they take the knife and they run the butt end of the handle on the stone to wear off some handle, so it keeps the balance of the knife.
Oh,
That might be in their head, though.
yeah. Oh, Rob's got a good question about steel. And I'm going to answer. So he's on Instagram. He's asking, explain the difference between carbon steel and Damascus steel. Which one's sharper and more durable? So that's kind of that opens a whole can of worms, Rob. But I wanted to, there was Federico on YouTube mentioned kind of referring about that Nihonto finish that's something that a lot of people will say when they're finishing a knife on natural stones. So I have, if that's what you're talking about, BTW, that's how I sharpen most of it. Like any of the Denkas that come through my store, I'll finish them on the natural stone. So you get that nice kind of mirror, like the core steel gets nice and shiny, and then you get a nice Kasumi finish on the rest of the bevel. So, so I guess if we veer away from handles for a quick second, Rob, the difference between carbon steel and Damascus steel is Damascus is more of a technique that you can do with any type of steel. But what it results in is this layered look. So this is a knife made by Masashi-san. And they accomplish that by folding the steel over, hammering it out, fold it over, hammer it out, stack it up, hammer it out. There's a lot of different techniques they can do. Like Hinura-san will take it and twist it to give what's called a torsion Damascus. But Damascus refers to that appearance on a knife or piece of steel where you've got those layers, okay? Carbon steel is a type of metal that has a higher concentration of carbon in it, like when they mix up the steel. The more carbon you add, the harder the steel is going to get. And the harder the steel gets, the sharper it's going to get, and the longer it's going to keep its edge. But hardness also can mean, like the higher the hardness, the sharper it is, the more brittle it can be. So you're kind of like, we're comparing two different things. Like Damascus is, for most intents and purposes, is a visual thing, whereas carbon steel, we're actually getting into the nitty gritty of it. So, because you can have a Damascus steel made out of carbon, just like you could have a Damascus made out of stainless. So it's kind of, it's like apples and oranges almost. So.
Hey, quick, I just ran off and chatted with Naoto, and Nihonto is really just means Japanese sword. And as far as kitchen knives go, which is, it's our specialty, since, we're mostly a bunch of burnt up old chefs, right? So we're not really into the sword talk, and I mean that in the way that we're more about cooking food.
Yeah. And
so we've learned a lot about knives that way. And yeah, Nihonto is more of a Japanese sword finish. I don't know much about that. I have seen there's kits where there's like, you finish it on natural stones and then you use different powders, and the powders wrapped in a bag, and there's polishes and there's camellia oil and stuff like that. And you really use different textures and different materials to bring up that sort of forging line or the hem-on line. But I'm sure you could see that on a sword that Fujiwara's made. But
yeah. So I'm just gonna, in case they're still watching, BTW, the Mike asked Naoto, and the Nihonto is a word that really just, it means Japanese sword. So it is like that kind of, it's not really something that we get into because we're all a bunch of burnt up old cooks. So we don't get into the sword making stuff quite so much, but it would be that kind of that mirror polish with natural stones and that kind of thing. So, what about different handle shapes? Should we talk about that at all, Mike?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's a couple, right? There's different Japanese style handle shapes.
Yeah.
The Western ones are all sort of a little different in and amongst one another.
Yeah, like sometimes, like, Fujiwara and I know Saji, like you get that, like with Saji, you get that like harder hook on the back. A lot of people kind of get like, and it's funny, like people notice things on knives that I would never really think about. Like, you know, like there was one person I was helping them, they were looking at a 0 one time, and they had really liked that was very prominent because they're like, oh, it's like, it won't slip out of my hand. And I'm like, what are you doing with your knife that you're concerned about? Like, are you bringing it on a boat? Like, I don't get it. But if you've got a big hand and it fills that up, I can see, like, if you like it or if you notice it, I fixate on the weirdest small things about knives too. So, but
You know, I find that's a reasonable thing. Like, I find sometimes that if I'm using a shorter knife, like this is a 180 mil Guto, and say this is what
Yeah.
I've got, and I'm going to try and cut something big, like maybe a whole Sterling or something, that instead of holding it up here where it's like kind of a chopping grip, I'll pull my hand way back, and that's okay up there to sort of have that little hook and use it to slice something bigger. Maybe I got a big cabbage or something. I don't know. Yeah, it's not bad to have that hook. God, don't die.
I'm okay.
You're okay? Great.
I need a glass of water. But we got a couple weird handles. See if anyone notices what's strange about that. You know what knife that is, right? This
I
isn't
do,
like, yeah.
I really like those knives. We don't have a ton of them, and I think every time I've shown one to a customer, we've gone and used the knife they were looking at as a sample, and we've tried cutting with it, just a tomato, right? And it's that knife has always left the store. There's something about the edge on that knife that is just extraordinary.
Yeah. So that's made by Kobayashi-san. His knives, if you were around for the garage sale, his knives were a big ticket item in the garage sale because they had the really crazy handles. What was that guy's name? Dustin? I don't know what his business's name was. The guy who made those funky handles.
Right. Those Kobayashis, I met him in Japan in the fall, and we actually hung out in an izakaya in Eki, waiting for a storm to blow over. He's neat. You know, he works for a company. It's him and another couple guys. They run a business sharpening knives for some other massive Japanese manufacturer. So they're just sort of like a contract business, but he's getting a little bored of just doing the same thing over and over. So he's trying to work on making his own stuff. So he's getting a little bit more inspired about what he's doing. And he's making some pretty fantastic stuff. And you know, those knives he's making out of blanks that he's getting someone to forge for him. And then he's doing the sharpening job and the grinding work and putting the handles on it. And holy Jesus, they're nice.
Yeah, those Damascus knives. I wish I bought one 2 garage sales ago when we first got them, and then when they came around in the spring, had I not just bought a new vehicle, I should have bought a knife.
Hey, I'm gonna run away for a second. I got a question here from Justin on Mr. Hawaii sharp knife. I forget his handle. Anyway, he wants to know how to knock off a handle. I'm going to go get some tools. I'm going to fake it with this Deba I've got here. So you keep these people entertained. I'll be back.
I can do that. So, well, why don't I just show a couple more, like while Mike's run off, I'll show you a couple other like kind of weird handles. I know Derek is still watching, and this is one that he and I talk about. Masashi does this really weird handle where it's an oval, but it's kind of got like that beginning of an octagon at the top. You see that? I really like that. I think that's super, I think it's really comfortable. And it's something a little bit different too, right? Like the handle makers are like, there's one guy in Takafu, his name's Yamamoto-san. He makes like all the handles for like that part of Japan. And it's really crazy, like the types of machinery that get used, like they're these super intense lathes that it's almost like they put a, it's like when you cut a key and they take your key and they stick it on the one side and then they use that side to guide the other side, like they just kind of run it in and it cuts over here while you're like navigating over here. So he's got like this thing and he puts like these machines in and it cuts them and then spits them out. It's really, really cool. But that's where you get like, you know, like the kind of traditional octagonal handle out of any material. This one's made out of cherry. The round, you know, like the round oval. There's also the D-shaped ones. That's a pretty cool one too. A lot of people think that the D-shaped handles are just for right-handed folks, but I'm a lefty and I think it's really comfortable. Not everyone agrees with me, but just the way that fits into my hand, I'm a big fan of it. My fingers kind of sit across this flat spot and it's real comfy. But if it was in my right hand, that ridge fits right in here, like at the base of your fingers. Feels weird in that hand for me, but here we go.
I got a couple things.
It's handle removal time.
So I'm gonna start with Justin B, and then we got a couple things, some stuff about Masashi, and then another question about handles with ABV. Okay. But I'm gonna fake it here a bit. So these are the tools that we use: a mallet, and you can use something like a paddle strop, or you can use something like this. This is what we have called the bendy stick. We use this for straightening out knives. This is actually an old axe handle because hickory is really good for hitting stuff, you know, like baseball bats. So hardwoods are really good because they don't give out as you're trying to knock the handle off. And in fact, this is one of the reasons why they put this ferrule on the handle. So we're just going to mimic it with this. Now, this is a knife that belonged to a friend of mine. Naoto and I are going to do a restoration video. As you can see, it's got a little bit of wear on it. Needs a tune-up. Doesn't have a handle. So we're going to redo this. So we'll do a more in-depth handling video at some point. And one of the things that you do, and one of the great things of the Japanese one, is it's got some wood inside. And so what you do is you get the tang really hot. You actually burn the handle into the knife. The knife, I should say, into the handle. So it's a perfect fit. Now, what you can do after that is you can take a glue stick and you can slice it into little coins, essentially, and you fill the handle with those. Then you just take the really hot tang and you push it in, and it melts the glue. And then if any excess squeezes out the top, you clean it up and remove it, right? You can also use a glue gun, but it seems to actually be messier. This seems to work better. Now, what I want to do when I want to take the handle off, pretending this is all the way on, is I take the knife like this, and then I put this piece of wood underneath it. So it's resting on the ferrule. Mm-hmm. And then I just take I'm going to roll back as far as I can, like this, and you just hit it. Now, if they all came off that easily, we probably wouldn't like these handles that much. Usually you got to whack it a few times. If it's really like well on there, sometimes you need to actually soak the handle in hot water, which will most likely destroy the handle, or at least it will compromise it greatly, the handle that you're removing.
Sometimes you just need to smash the bugger off. Sometimes they won't go, but
yeah, Kumos for a while, and I haven't done it in a long time, but Kumos are definitely ones that those handles were never coming off, and you needed to destroy it. So
because a lot of
it, Justin, I hope that helped there.
Yeah, a lot of the knives that are destined for Canada, like the blacksmiths who've been working with us for a while, have learned that because we've got like the knives go to Calgary, which is incredibly dry. So they've learned to put some epoxy or glue in them. Whereas, knives that hang around Japan, like the humidity is much more constant. So the wood doesn't shrink and swell. So they don't always need as much of that extra, insurance, as Masashi told me one time.
So yeah, just to say again, that was obviously the handle wasn't on. You're going to have to give it a couple of good whacks to get the handle to come off for the most part. Using a softer mallet is good, better than a metal hammer, and something flat that goes up against the ferrule of the handle. I like using the paddle strap, to be honest, because it's got a piece of leather, less likely to scuff up the blade of the knife. So yeah, and then again, Naoto and I are gonna record a video of doing a restoration of this knife. So, but yeah, a couple more questions here on YouTube I want to get to, Chris. We got just a comment from David S. Masashi seems to have some pretty cool and quietly popular knives. Not sure why so many of knives have the plastic ferrule, takes away from the cool blade design. I think, now correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, I think the Koi is the only one with the plastic ferrule, right? Are you there?
The Koi is actually got black Paca.
Black Paca, yeah, right.
There was a couple of single bevel knives in the garage sale that had a plastic ferrule, but generally speaking, he uses water buffalo horn or the black Paca on the Koi.
Yeah. Paca wood, of course, is kind of an industry term. I think it's called something else now, but it's a type of wood where they actually impregnate the wood with a silicone resin or some kind of phenolic resin that makes it like part wood, part plastic. So really resilient material. But yeah, no, they're not often plastic. They might look like, the buffalo horn honestly does look quite like plastic. So, but yeah, you're right. Quietly popular, and it's because he's a absolutely amazing blacksmith.
Yeah, it depends. I find it often depends on the collar too, because like this one here is super dark and consistent, so it just catches the light and looks like, but sometimes you get them with the little kind of white or brown striations in it, and that's when, those are the ones that I usually grab really fast. Like that's the knife I want, is those weird little, you know, bits that make it different than everything else. So there's just, Mike, I was just explaining to some people on Instagram who just joined that this is our Japanese Knife 101. And once a week or so, we kind of have like an open floor Q&A where we generally start with a topic, but it often goes off the rails, and that's okay, because it is about, you know, if I need something to talk about for a few minutes before everyone else gets here. So today we were talking about different handle styles, Japanese handles versus Western style handles. But now we're talking about different knife makers, which is always a lot of fun. And I saw there, Mike, Iggy was asking about if we sold handles on the website. I don't know if they're right on the website, but we do often have them. We've got them around. And they vary in price depending on what they're made of and what shape they are. Oh, someone's asking about the Tadokoro Nikiris. I can get one of those.
I'll speak to the handles. The replacement handles are a thing that we have. Now, we don't have them set up in a way that we're trying to rehandle knives just sort of on a whim. We typically have them for someone who has experienced some damage. Sometimes the wood breaks or cracks. Like we mentioned, sometimes your dog chews on it. So if you do have an issue with a knife, we're happy to sort that out for you. And of course, if you just prefer a different handle, we can talk about it. There's not a whole ton of stock of handles available in the world. Frankly, there's really, I think, one, maybe two knife handle makers in Japan.
Yeah, I talked a little bit about Yamamoto-san. He's the one that I met.
Yeah, no, they do the brunt of the work, and they don't make a ton of extra handles. Frankly, they're not the easiest thing to come by. We do have a friend in the States who's making some stuff. We get those. They're really kind of more exotic looking. But yeah, no, we can rehandle a knife. hello@knifeware.com. Send us pictures. Let's talk. We can see what we can do.
I'm just telling someone a little bit about this Tadokoro knife. Oh, Sakai Kikumori joined too.
Oh, hello, Sakai Kikumori.
What do you know about that, eh? So what I think this knife here, it's Shirogami, so it's white carbon. It's got a good weight in the hand. It's not too, I don't find it very heavy, but it is a little bit heavier than what you might expect when you pick it up. It's kind of, I'm in like a weird zone about how heavy this knife actually is. But one of the things I really like about it is this detail at the back. The choil of the knife, like this area here at the heel, has all been machined out. It's a nice little detail. It's kind of, they thinned it out at the back there. I think have you picked up one of these?
Just the Tsujihiki. Oh, that is nice.
Yeah.
I've picked up the Tsujihiki 1,000 times. It looks like, I think it's kind of neat because you look at that knife. I would, when I was looking at that, thought it was a single bevel until you pick it up and flip it over.
Yeah, it does have the look of a single bevel for sure. Appleseed, I haven't spoken with Appleseed for a while. They're asking, you don't see a lot of long Nikiris. Why is that? They're normally only 165 millimeters. Sometimes you see them at, like the Moritakas and Fujiwara, both make them at 180 millimeters pretty reliably. I think it's just because if you get that big with a Nikiri, I don't know, I might guess that you'd be tempted to swing it like a cleaver. It ends up being a pretty hefty knife. I think I have a 195 here.
I really like the Moritaka 180 Nikiri that we don't seem to get that often, but it's just a little bit more tip heavy. And I like the Nikiri for its sort of pick it up and put it down kind of ability. You just like chop away with it. That 180 with a bit more tip weight, I find really comfortable. I think it would be a fantastic knife. But you're right. Typically, like just like a Santoku, 99% of the Santokus are 165 mils. Same with
Orange Yoke says that's who I was showing the Tadakoro. He's weighing that. I say him. I don't know if he could, but they're looking at that versus the Fujiwara 195 Mabaroshi.
That's hard.
That's a hard one. Yeah. The longer Nikiri is not cheap. I think Fujiwara just doesn't like making them, so he charges an outlandish amount of money for this knife. It's a $995 for a 195 Denka Nikiri. But it's special. There's at least that. But the Mabaroshi is going to be a little easier to take care of. I don't know if carbon steel is a concern of yours. White carbon steel tends to be a little more reactive. So the Tadakoro would require a little bit more looking after. You might want to get yourself a bottle of camellia oil to go along with it. The Mabaroshi is going to be a little easier to maintain on a regular basis because of that stainless steel jacketing on the outside. But you're kind of between a rock and a hard place. They're both awesome. I
got a fun comment over here. I got a fun comment over here on YouTube. David S. brought something up. Quite a conversation to get into. It could go in lots of directions, but his comment is, I guess, about the law of diminishing returns. Like at a certain point, how much better does a knife like a Shigefusa or a Hinora really get when you're spending upwards of $1,000 on a knife? Like, really, how much better is it than something like a Kato or a Kurosaki? Now, I mean, you can go whichever way you want. Personally, I would rather more knives than one really nice knife. I've got a Takumura R2 Hana 210 Gyuto. I love that knife. I hardly ever use it. I'm afraid it's too delicate. It's too beautiful. It's too expensive. That's my person, right? I like using them. There's a lot of work that goes into a Shigefusa and a Hinora. They're not just putting more dollars on the price tag. They're legitimately earning it through the work that they do. Like Shigefusa is there's basically no automation that happens that they do in their process. There's so much work that goes into it by hand. The grinding, he doesn't use any sort of mechanical grinding on his blades because he doesn't want to overheat them or risk overheating them. Does he provide you a better result? Maybe at a real fine level, but I think it's about what you're happy using it. And if you want to really honor the craftsmanship and you really want to like recognize that, for sure, that's a place to go. Will you get an amazing knife with a Kurosaki or a Kato? Absolutely. And you know what? There's also a bit of fame and popularity that goes into that too, right? Those guys understand there's a bit of supply and demand pricing that applies. Kurosaki and Kato, even though they're in their mid 40s, are considerably younger and not as famous, so they don't get to charge as much.
Yeah,
that's
it's like if you
sense.
Well, and even like people like Shigefusa, like I remember both Masashi and Bob Kramer have both said that they're one of the their crush, their blacksmith crush is Shigefusa. So like they must be doing something, right?
Well, I'll tell you what I like about Shigefusa is that they're beautiful, they feel wonderful,
Yeah.
Their sharp is incredible. Sharpening them, I've sharpened one, and it was mind blowing how sharp it got. But I think the thing I like about them the most is the subtlety of the patterning in the steel. It is not all dressed up. It's not like jewelry. It's rustic.
Yeah.
It looks natural, I think. In a way, it's sort of a weird thing to say. It's definitely a man-made effect, but it just,
That's what I liked about
subtle.
about Kagura-san.
Yeah.
It's like that's like, because like I've got two knives from Kagura-san. I've got an axe too, and it's not until you start using them until the Damascus pops.
Right.
Like if you just look at it, it's got like this kind of oil. Like I wish I had one here. Maybe Alex has one here. I don't know.
Well, that Kagura, like once it starts to oxidize and tarnish and build its patina, that's what makes it show up.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of those things that like makes me love those types of knives, the carbon steel blade, because it just more and more becomes yours.
Oh, that's it, right? Yeah, it becomes yours. That's a good talking point. I like that. But I find, you know what I think? What's that saying?
Naoto handed me this note. Isn't that amazing?
Mention Instagram. Oh, I have been. Oh, what's he saying? Oh, for everyone who's listening, hold that still. Naoto is going to be interviewing
Aoki-san.
Aoki-san from Sakai Takayuki on Wednesday at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. So that's tomorrow at 6 p.m. Calgary time, or 8 o'clock like Ottawa time. If you're in a different time zone.
Toshikazu Aoki-san.
Toshikazu Aoki-san.
But we call him Aoki-san because we don't know him.
Mm.
That's what I remember. Wednesday, 6 p.m.
That'll be worth watching. Those are always good when Naoto gets to do it with the blacksmiths.
Well, this is
and then
part
you can
of
ask them questions, right?
Our continuing series of the small makers, where we're featuring these sort of unsung heroes, these blacksmiths who really have limited productions, limited supply, but we're fortunate enough to get some of their stuff. So we're trying to shine a light on these guys and let people know how great they are and what cool stuff they make and what makes them special and unique. So tune in for those and check out the Small Makers page on our website.
I like what Justin is the Sharp Hawaii guy, right?
That's right.
Yeah, I like what he said. He said it's dollar to smiles ratio and everyone's is different, which I think is important, because when I help people pick out knives in the store, and I'm sure Mike is going to agree with me because he's the one who taught me how to do all this, is if there is something about a particular knife when you pick it up and it makes you happy, who cares about the rest of it? Right? Like if you because you can always give yourself the argument for, well, the responsible choice versus the one I want, or this one will be easier to take care of, but I really like the look of this one. You'll always be thinking about the one that got away. So like if it makes you feel good when you pick it up, don't worry about all the nitty gritty, like if you're really, if you love the look of this knife and you pick it up and it feels awesome and you can't picture going to work without it, well, you'll learn how to take care of carbon steel.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that. I've never really put it that way. Dollar to smiles ratio. Makes a lot of sense.
That sounds like something somebody who lives in Hawaii probably thinks about, when you're like, hey man, I'm living out here on the beach, I get to go surfing. I think when you're in that Zen life of Hawaii, I think. Yeah. Says the guy who's never been to Hawaii. Just throwing it out there, Justin. I figure you're pretty chill.
Yeah, seems like a chill guy. Yeah, and then Iggy says you'll always end up buying the one you wanted in the first place. And I see that happen all the time.
Yeah.
Like I've had conversations with especially cooks who come into the shop and they've had their eye on a particular knife for a long time, and then they need something for work, so they'll settle on something that's maybe a little more responsible. But then they come back and they buy the one they wanted anyways. Like you'll end up with two, is what and
you end up spending $500 instead of the $300 you would have spent if you just bought the thing you wanted. Yeah. Buy once, cry once. That's what I've heard somebody say.
Oh, that's a good one. You guys have got some good questions and tidbits.
Yeah, knife buying is kind of fun. I think knife buying has actually taught me how to buy things better overall.
Chef Mech says that's why they've got their 210 Denka.
Yeah, you might as well, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I've learned too. When you take care of things, like you learn how something works and you learn what its capabilities are. You don't use it outside of those capabilities. You don't use your kotetsu for cutting, the stems of roses or something stupid. You use it for the right job, right tool for the right job. You take care of it. You put it away. You clean it. You sharpen it, and then you'll keep it for the rest of your life. And if you've had something for 40 or 50 years, who cares how much you spent on it?
Yeah.
Take care of things. Then you're not creating waste. You're not turning things over. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you just end up like, what's this? Oh, David's asking a question there. That's a question for Kevin. Would you guys ever carry any non-Japanese makers making Japanese style blades? Some of these guys online are amazing, have rave reviews on forums and groups from chefs and knowledgeable users. One search on Instagram, you can find some amazing stuff. Don Nguyen, Majumi Knives, Pig Iron Forge, some crazy blades and handles. The thing about that is it's kind of like restaurants. This is how I've kind of figured it out. Is if you're dealing with a farmer and you're running your restaurant and you want to put, I don't know, you put strawberries on your menu and you're working with this farmer and this farmer can only produce 2 pounds of strawberries a week. That's not enough to put it on your menu. So a lot of the time it's a matter of supply and demand with those kinds of fellas. I'll never say never, but
we certainly haven't said no to those guys. We just haven't gotten into it. I don't think there's anything stopping us other than we're kind of, staying focused on this at the moment. And I mean, if it happened, it would happen, right?
Well, we do sell Chris Green's knives. He makes it. He's a Canadian making a Japanese style knife. They're outdoor knives. You'd find those at Kent of Inglewood. Never say never. Chef Max is going to head to He has his mind set on heading to Calgary on Thursday and picking up the 165 Denka Nikiri. I think you should do that. That's what I would do on Thursday if I didn't already have plans. Go to Calgary and buy myself a new Denka.
You should come to Calgary.
I should come to Calgary, but there's this thing going on that makes it hard to get around. Normally, Mike, I would have been in Calgary by now.
You have a motorbike. Yeah,
but it takes a while to get out there.
Oh, that's true.
If I was driving to Calgary just to come give you a high five, then it's a lot of vacation time.
I'm sick of your excuses.
Yeah, I'm pretty terrible.
Yeah, no, small makers is kind of a thing, and that's what we're really into. So, if we ever got in touch with these guys, we'd be super intrigued to see what they've got.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's how we met, Dustin with the handles and,
One of the things I found that kind of leads us back to the Japanese makers, and a lot of these other makers we find do make a great product, but they can turn out 5 or 6 knives a day. Where we've got these Japanese guys, it just seems that maybe it's because that they've been making sharp objects out of steel for a couple thousand years. They seem to produce at a bit of a different capacity. Now, one thing that we often hear, and this goes back to the handles, is I've seen and had conversations with knife makers in this area where their comments are, "Great knife. Why did they put a broomstick on it for a handle?" Well, they're making a tool meant to be used. They're not fussing. The same guy I was having a conversation with, we ended up talking about how it takes them 6 hours to make one handle, right? Yeah. So they're making a tool to be used. They do look beautiful, but they're not overdoing it. They're not really dressing it up too much. And it's just a style, right? It's a choice. They make knives, they buy handles, they pop a handle on, there you go. You got a really wicked knife to use. And I don't know if they're really overthinking it. And that's a definite choice of a handle. It's a choice when you're spending $300 or $400 on a knife. And sometimes you just want the $300 or $400 go into the blade. And sometimes you want it spread between the blade and the handle. It's all personal choice. But I think the Japanese guys that we're dealing with are pretty phenomenal. Oh, do each of us have a favorite knife maker?
I went and grabbed a couple knives.
I'm really enjoying my Mizaki Santoku. I've had it for 2 years now. I bought the first time they came into the shop. I picked it up. I had that moment where I was like, "Yep, okay, I'm buying a knife today. This one's mine." Feels great. I love cutting with it. I love the way it feels. He bevels the knives so well and so consistently. I'm concerned about when I have to hot rod it, but if I can achieve the same kind of grind that he gets on it. So yeah, I would say Mizaki's are kind of one of my favorites right now.
You should probably tell people what hot rodding means.
Oh, hot rodding. Well, hot rodding is a terminology about you thin out a knife by sharpening it flat to the bevel. So here's a Deba. This bevel here, instead of just sharpening the edge of the knife, you actually sharpen it flat to the side. And you do that to thin the blade out. And because the layers of the steel are the way they are with the 3 layers, if you were to just sharpen the edge, you'd remove the core steel running into the cladding steel. You can't properly sharpen that. So what we do is we thin the blade out. It recedes the cladding steel, thus exposing more core steel for you to sharpen the edge. Now, that also keeps the original geometry of that bevel. So if you were to only sharpen the edge, the knife would get shorter and shorter and shorter, thus getting thicker and thicker. And you feel that when you cut. It feels fat, it feels chunky, it feels like you're using an axe instead of a razor. So that's what hot rodding is. And I remember one time trying to go after one of our Japanese suppliers about what the term in Japanese is for hot rodding, because I was like, this is obviously not a Japanese term.
Yeah.
And we finally talked about it, and it was Shiba, and he finally went, "Oh, we just call that sharpening, because that's just how you do it properly."
Yeah. And that's why it takes long. That's why it takes us longer. Because you're not just ripping an edge on it. You're not just pulling it through a machine. You got to, you're paying attention to those details and making sure that your knife is, the right shape when you're done.
Yeah, but then you'll love it.
Yeah. For me, my favorite knife is probably my Denka Nakiri. I don't have it here, but it's got it's kind of special. It's a little extra. It's extra thin. I got that knife because Kevin wanted a 165 Denka Nakiri with the finger notch, a Japanese handle, but thinner than usual. So he ordered, because this is what happens when you're Kevin, you get to, he ordered 6 of the knife to that specification, picked out the one he wanted the most, and then sold the other 5. And the one that I got was the last one that was around. So it also, I have it, it's engraved, which it was when Linnea was still around, Mike, when Fujiwara came to visit.
Right.
And I bought the knife, and then they said, "Oh, well, we'll hold on to it for a couple of days. We'll get Fujiwara to engrave it for you. What do you want it to say?" And I said, "Okay, I don't care. It's my name or something." And they said that they wanted, Linnea and Kevin were kind of bickering about it, and they said they were going to get the word crawfish put on it, because we went to Toronto, you were there, and the 2 of them got into an argument about this tattoo, saying, "Oh, Kevin is just a shit disturber," for anyone who's ever met him. You know that. So he was just like, "Oh, that's a lobster." And then she was like, "No, it's a crayfish. Like, just ask him." And I wasn't going to get into it. I was pretty new. Like, I'd only worked here for like a month. I was like, if the boss says it's a lobster, it's a lobster. I don't give a shit. But then we were outside of the Drake Hotel in Toronto, and some drunk dude came up and like grabbed me by the shirt, and it's like, "It's a crayfish. See, it's got the claws are the same." So then apparently there's no Japanese word for crayfish. So my Denka Nakiri says spiny lobster on the side.
Oh, right on.
Yeah. And then Derek, who has commented on YouTube and on Instagram, he is a good customer of the Ottawa store. He's been down to see us a few times recently, and he made me a saya for it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he made me this really beautiful saya with it's made out of walnut, I believe. I'm hoping he'll correct me if I'm wrong, but it's got some really nice inlays in it too. It's really special. It was really, really kind of him. He wouldn't take a penny for it, so I made him a big batch of barbecue sauce instead.
Oh,
which I think that he, I won on that, but no, he's a really nice guy, and I'm glad to have met him. And I've got this really awesome part of a story now. So, oh, he says I was right. It was walnut. Nice. But Instagram is going to kick us off. So I'm going to say goodbye to anyone who's watching on Instagram. If you want to catch the rest of our conversation, we're going to be at it for a couple more minutes. I do have to run eventually, but we're going to keep talking over on YouTube. So if you go to knifeword.com/YouTube, you can catch the rest of the conversation. So I'll talk to you guys soon. There you go.
Whew. Now that we got rid of those guys.
Got rid of those
right?
Instagram crowd.
Instagrammers.
If I was to kind of keep going, so that's my favorite knife I currently own. The knife that I consistently lust after is this one. Is a Masashi Kuroshu 240. I need another 240, like I need a hole in the head, but it is my favorite shape. But something about this knife from Masashi, I love the way it feels in my hand. I can feel the texture of the Damascus. I'm always a sucker for the dark steel and the dark handles and all that. The knife is just, and it's heavy. I like that. It's just
his knives,
knife.
And it seems like there's actually kind of like a style with the Niigata area where he is. Mm-hmm. They seem to like for example, the Sugimoris, they all seem to have a nice deep bevel to the blade. So it's thin up and around the edge, but has a long progressive bevel that goes up to a thicker blade and a thicker spine. And it gives you a really nice feel when you're cutting with it. It's got the weight, but it still has the thinness. And personally, I've found when using that knife on something like a squash, it just slides through it. It's a crazy feeling. It's amazing.
But I also I've got to hang out with Masashi a couple of times. Like one year I got to go to Japan with Kevin, and Masashi came here to Ottawa a couple years ago. And we had lunch at the Japanese ambassador's house. I just got to hang out with the guy for a few days. I don't speak a word of Japanese, but it didn't really stop us from having a good time. So I've just kind of got this, I have a knife from him, but as he makes more, I feel like, oh, I want one of those too. And, oh, I like that line. And there's just, I don't know, something about it.
Well, there was a comment earlier that he's sort of quietly popular. And that is true. I think he's in his initial period of people starting to get to know him. He's continually, I wouldn't say expanding, but he's continually tooling up and continually working on his production in his shop. He makes absolutely incredible knives. His single bevel knives, I bought a 240 Yanagiba from him. I think it was $300. I felt like I was.
I can get one.
I felt like I was stealing it, man. Holy cow. It is so perfect. It is so straight. It has not got any warp to it.
I've got a 270.
His knives are absolutely incredible. And
he's a
cool dude.
We've got a friend at the store here. His name's Alan. Alan has special ordered a Kuroshu Yanagiba.
Ooh, don't show me that. That's so nice.
This is what Mike's talking about. This is the 270. One of the things that I think is a really nice touch on his is the polish he puts on the spine.
I love the fact. Sorry, go for it.
I was gonna say it's I think Kevin told me one time it's like a Sakai style kind of thing. It's like a little something extra,
Yeah. So. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, his hammer that he uses for engraving the knife.
Oh yeah.
I love this. So being a blacksmith, you have skills that some of us don't. So when he wanted to make a hammer to engrave, he just made the hammer, right? He took some steel and he forged the head. And then because he likes mirror polishing stuff, he's mirror polished it. But if you look really close, he folded the steel. It's a Damascus hammer.
Yeah.
And then the handle, he went on a hike and he went and found a downed cherry tree, because high altitude cherry is more dense. So it made a better handle. So it's this foraged cherry handle, hand forged Damascus steel, mirror polished hammer. And when he came to do some engraving, about a week before he arrived, we got a tree stump in the mail. Did I ever
Oh,
tell
yeah.
you that?
Yeah. Yeah.
All of a sudden we open this big box, big heavy box, and I open it up and there's a tree stump in it that had 2 pins on it. And that's what he uses to forge the knife on. I was just like, we have trees here, man. You know, we can get you a tree. You need a tree. We got a tree. But no, that was his tree. That was his forging or his engraving tree.
Mm. Yeah.
Cool.
Well, it's, they're particular. Got to be. It's like, you know what? It's not that different than from a chef setting up their station. Like, it's different in the sense that it's different work, but I'm sure they're just as particular.
Well, you change the variables. You need to learn something new. Whatever you're doing might work differently. And if you want to produce really amazing results, those little tiny details of consistency really help to deliver a fine product in the end.
Well, here, why don't we, because I'm going to have to run here in a minute, Mike. Why don't we just kind of throw out our last, if you've got any other questions or comments, I'll give you till the end of my spiel, okay? And then we'll answer a quick round. So this week we've got, tomorrow, Naoto is going to be interviewing Aoki-san from was it Sakai
Takayuki, yeah.
Yep. So that's going to be tomorrow at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. So it's 8 o'clock for those of you in my neck of the woods, and 5 o'clock if you're in BC. On Thursday, we've got the Vancouver crew is doing our weekly sharpening class. And then Friday afternoon, we got Naoto doing our advanced sharpening. Next week on Tuesday, we're doing our Cut Like a Chef class, which will be, I don't know. Send me an email if you got something you want to see, because I'll figure it out. I'll do it on the night, But yeah, if you send me an email, chris@knifeware.com, if there's a particular thing you'd like to see and it's not absolutely outrageous, I will do my damnedest to find the right product and show you some knife skills that you might be a little more interested in. Otherwise, we'll just kind of settle on, I'll make some kind of salad. I usually just go to the grocery store and see what looks nice, and we work on it that way. We've still got Small Makers Month going on. So there's it's more about a collection of knife makers who can't supply knifeware year round. So we've taken the month of August and are making a real effort to highlight these blacksmiths, learn more about them, share it with you guys, and have like a nice round selection of what these people make. We've got some stuff from Manaka-san. There's the Yoshida, like the ZDPs. There's those Takadoros, which I was showing off earlier. Check out the website, knifeware.com. Look for the Small Makers Month banner. There's a lot of really cool stuff. And we've already done interviews with a gentleman from Sakai Kikumori that you would find on YouTube. There's an interview with Manaka-san already. With Naoto. So those are really, because it's just like what we're doing right now. Like if you have a question that you want to ask this guy, I know there was some people asking about like the Takadoro knives. But if you're looking at any of the Sakai Takayuki stuff and you want to ask them, why did you do that? Or what do you like to work with? What's your favorite thing to eat? Like, it doesn't matter. Like we'll get you an answer. So it's definitely worth checking out.
It'll be great. Look forward to seeing you all there.
Yeah.
And thanks for joining us here on YouTube, Facebook. Hope you enjoy the stuff we're doing. Any comments you've got, anything you'd like to see us do, shout it out. We'll be happy to try and oblige.
So before we say goodbye, I'm going to answer Jeremy's question. He's asking, what is the best oil or product to maintain and protect Japanese wa handles? I'm going to go grab a tub of beeswax, which is what I use. I'll show you. And I don't know, Mike, if you've got something better, you let me hear it, but.
No, I think you're right. I think the cutting board stuff I like, it's a mineral oil with a beeswax component, and that penetrates the wood, treats the wood. The beeswax gives it a bit of a seal. That's what I use on cutting boards too.
Yeah, so this is called Clapham's Beeswax Salad Bowl Finish. You can find it on the website. The big tub is $24. I go through a big tub of this every 2 years for all my knife handles and my cutting board. It's awesome. You just, you can be pretty generous when you put it on. If the knife handle if it's particularly dry, let it kind of soak in and then buff it out the next day.
I use that on my blades too. Because I've got perhaps too many knives. So I will go through every 3 or 4 months and I'll just change out my set of knives. And so when I put them away, I actually will put the beeswax on the blade as well. And it's kind of like oiling the blade, but I feel like since it's got the wax, the oil doesn't absorb into paper. It really sort of coats the knife. And I find that keeps any rust from happening.
That's a good trick. I like it.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Thanks, Iggy. Thanks, Derek, for sticking around watching. It was great to have you.
Yeah, cool. Well, thanks, everybody.
Appreciate your comments.
Yeah, no, it helps keep things moving. So, very good. Well, I'm sure I'll talk to you soon, Mike.
Yeah, but we'll talk soon. Take care, everybody.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye for now.